Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Friday, everyone. This is Marty Kaiser with Real Estate Tidbits. Hope everyone's doing well and hopefully staying out of the heat. If you have to go outside, it's going to be a hot next few days, so stay hydrated. Today I'm going to go over, I think, some really interesting things, especially some of the upcoming changes in real estate. I think you'll really be interested in what I have to say about them, what's going to take place, and what its potential impact will be in the real estate business. The first thing I wanted to go over, we'll have a brief sports overview. As you probably know now, the NBA championships are over. The New York Knickerbockers were the champions. They beat the San Antonio Spurs 4-1. It was a very highly contested series. All the games were close. Believe it or not, the Spurs had large leads in most of the games, and they were ahead in every game, but they only closed out one game. I think what was obvious in this series are two things. The Spurs' inexperience, both from the players and also their coaching staff. And secondly, I think you've got to give props to the most valuable player, Jalen Brunson. It had been stated that a small player couldn't be a leader in a championship format. And even though Jalen Brunson was guarded very stringently, double-teamed a lot, the way the series was called, he was fouled a lot. That calls didn't on both sides. He just was unflappable, and his fourth quarter performances were just tremendous. So major props to the New York Knicks and Jalen Brunson. They had a huge parade yesterday, and it was nice to see, even though I'm not a Knick fan, of course, and I know a lot of people from New York. But this was the first championship the Knicks had in 53 years, so the city rightly celebrated it. And the interesting thing was, for at least a half a day or so, New York actually seemed like a more compassionate city. You know, New Yorkers are generalized as a very crowded, kind of rough atmosphere there. People do their own thing. There's not a lot of patience there. And it takes a certain type of personality to thrive in New York. But for one day, it seemed like they had a commonality, and for the most part, it was very friendly, and they didn't have too many criminal incidents, fortunately. So that was nice to see, and I hope everybody that participated in the parade enjoyed it. Secondarily, on another basketball item, the Orlando Magic introduced their new coach yesterday, Sean Sweeney. Sean happened to be the head assistant for the San Antonio Spurs, and he had an extensive assistance career with other teams, all very successful. I did happen to watch the press conference yesterday, and I haven't seen Sean Sweeney speak previously, but it was obvious that he's a no-nonsense guy. He's going to definitely be an accountability coach and stress fundamentals and basketball IQ and effort. And I think he's going to do a great job with the Magic. The Magic are still not a championship team yet. Their biggest failings are twofold, in my opinion. Number one, they still desperately need shooting, which is definitely the fault of upper management headed by Jeff Weitzman. He just hasn't brought in adequate shooting over his tenure. I think he's been in Orlando now 4 or 5 years, and he just has not brought in any good shooters, with the exception of Desmond Bane, who he had to trade all his future draft picks for. So they need one or two shooters that can balance the team and also come in off the bench. So we'll see about that. You know, their one high draft pick that was supposed to get shooting, Jed Howard, has been an abysmal bust, and there's a good possibility he won't even be on the club next year. The big trade they made 2 years ago to get Contavious Caldwell-Pope, he was a bust with Orlando, and it was obvious, if you're a student of basketball, that a good bit of his success prior to coming to Orlando was because he was with Nikola Jokic, who's just at the kind of the genius of basketball in terms of benefiting his teammates. The Magic didn't have personnel that could put him in those positions, and he wasn't a player that could make his own shots. So the jury's out on that. Obviously, we'd love to see Orlando be a factor in the basketball playoffs, but so far the last 3 years they've been first-round exits. So we'll see and keep our fingers crossed and give Sean Sweeney our best regards. Lastly, and this hasn't gotten super high publicity, but I did want to mention it as part of my sports update, is Major League Baseball. Even though it's somewhat of a long shot, I think during my history of living in Orlando, which been a number of years now, this is the best opportunity we've had to get a Major League Baseball team here. I would say the probability is still probably 20 to 25%, but that's a realistic number. It's definitely, before it was more of a pipe dream. Pat Williams, who did a great job for Orlando, he unfortunately passed away in the last couple of years. He was the main cheerleader for Major League Baseball here, but he was unsuccessful. That was due to two reasons, in my opinion. Number one, our political leaders in Orlando are not visionaries, kind of very conservative and corporate-driven, and they focus extensively on tourism. Obviously, tourism is a big generator of revenue here, but we need a lot more emphasis on local folks in terms of improving quality of living and giving them some additional activities that are wholesome family activities. And Major League Baseball would fill all those bills. I have no doubt, and this is from somebody who considers themselves a student of sports, and I have a business background. I don't have all the analytics and all that good stuff, but I have no doubt that Major League Baseball would be a tremendous success in Orlando. Think about it. We're a city starved for professional sports. All we have is the Magic, who have been very well supported in their 37-year history in Orlando. And Major League Baseball would have two big things going for it in Orlando. Number one, they would have limited competition here, as there's really no other sports that compete during the summertime. And number two, and most importantly, they could combine the local aspect with the tourist aspect in baseball. Think about how many people are transplants that live in Orlando, first off. Like myself, I'm from the Maryland, D.C. area. So, of course, I have a background with the Baltimore Orioles or the Washington, D.C. teams. We have a lot of people that live in New York, so they're Yankee or Met fans. We have people from Philadelphia, they're Philadelphia Philly fans. We have a lot of people from Ohio, they're Cleveland Indian or Cincinnati Reds fans. We have a lot of people from Chicago, the Chicago Cubs or Chicago White Sox fans. We have folks from California. They're probably San Francisco Giants or LA Dodgers fans. And that's just to name a few. There's other cities. There's a bunch of teams from Texas, and we have a lot of Texas transplants here. So there's no doubt that those people, a lot of them, not only would support the baseball team here, but they would make an effort to go see their favorite team when they play here. Secondly, and equally importantly, are the tourists. Think about all the families that visit Disney. Disney is strictly the most wholesome entertainment. It's family activity. And then think about how many, and I'll generalize here, think how many dads go there really because they want to please their kids. That, adults, some love Disney, some say, they could do without the lines and the heat and stuff. But the parents faithfully go along because it's a dream for their kids. So think about how they could get something that they like while they're here and still take their kids to it. Again, all these tourists are from all parts of the United States. And all these baseball teams are from all parts of the United States. So to me, this would be a no-brainer. The team has not been successful in Tampa from a business standpoint for two or three reasons. Number one, and most importantly, they have a horrible stadium. It's not a baseball venue, and it's in a terrible location. It's not convenient. Number two, the team has always struggled for money and never really had the top of super wealthy owners that a lot of the other teams had. So they needed big attendance, and they haven't gotten it. You go to a Tampa game, except when the Yankees or Red Sox are playing here, and it's like a mausoleum there. They're lucky to get 10, 12,000 a game. And in spite of that, the Tampa team has performed very well on the field. But they've had to do it in an unconventional way. Every time a player gets good, they have to get rid of them because they can't pay them. And they're always getting bottom of the barrel players and then improving them. They've done a great job of player development. They get what's called a lot of retreads that were mediocre with other teams, and Tampa's able to improve them because of their management and their upper management visionaries and abilities to extract the most out of players. Like, for example, the team this year, they have 3 really good hitters, and the rest of the team is lacking in hitting. The pitching staff, like they have one of their starting pitching, Nick Martinez, and they have a couple others that were not successful with other teams, but they've improved quite a bit with Tampa this year. But they still have depth problem. They don't have the good bullpens like other teams do, and this is all due to lack of funds to spend. The Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, they outspend the Tampa team probably 4-1. Well, that's not an even playing field. If baseball came to Orlando, it would be a whopping success. And the reason it's a 20 to 25% probability and not greater is because the Tampa ownership would prefer to stay in Tampa, but that's all predicated on them building a new stadium in Tampa in a good location and with the city or state giving the proper financial support. And that's still very much up in the air. And I think if the stadium doesn't get some real traction in the next year, I think Orlando is going to become a much bigger option. So keep an eye on that. I would love baseball here, and I can tell you I would definitely be a supporter. They're talking about a location being near I-4 and SeaWorld, which would be a tremendous location. So that's all about sports. Next, let's go over some data in real estate. As always, I always like to use Hunters Creek as a framework. So Hunters Creek inventory is continuing to increase. As of this morning, we had 46 listings in Hunters Creek. That's the highest amount of listings we've had in a good bit, and it's starting to definitely increase every week. The range of the listings go from 393 to 900,000. Now, an interesting trend, this is the first time I've done this, I did kind of a mid-month comparison. So how many solds have we had in Hunters Creek single-family homes for the first 18 days of June? Well, we've had 12 solds ranging from 380,000 to 965,000. Just as a comparison, and this is by far the widest differentiation we've had for a long time, in 2025, for the same 18 days of June, we only had 6 solds. So we've actually had twice as much solds for the first 18 days that we did in 2025. The sold prices range from 500,000 to 8.25. So it'll be interesting to see once the month is completed how the total month compares to last year. But again, I'm cautiously optimistic that these numbers are going to be on the upgrade. The one thing that's definitely noticeable, the solds for the most part are the houses that are priced properly, have excellent presentation, and nice upgrades. The houses that are kind of what I call the middle of the road houses, they're still having a much longer time on the market. The next category of real estate, which I think you're really going to find interesting, and I want you to pay close attention to this, and I covered this probably 6 months to a year ago in a little bit of detail, but now we've got some more data and more perspective, are what we call private listings. Now, what are private listings and what's going on? Well, there's all these legal entanglements now with Compass Real Estate suing Zillow, and they're, getting involved in the court system. It's a legal mess. But basically the position of Compass, and I'm paraphrasing, so I may not be 100% correct, is not only do they want the ability to have their own private listing network, which they've done for a few years now, meaning that they put houses for sale on their network that don't go into the multiple listing service, but they also want to force Zillow to post that data on Zillow's site, along with other data providers posting these private listings. And so it's a messy legal battle back and forth. He said, she said. They both make a lot of representations, bold statements, and it's definitely got a large potential impact on the real estate industry as well as consumers. So I wanted to share some recent data that came out in the last week. Now, you take this with a little bit of a grain of salt because both the studies stated and of course the back and forth positions, have some bias in them. But the study that I'm going to refer to is a Zillow study. Now, Zillow in their study stated that private listings that sold through a private listing network, of which Compass is by far the largest one in the United States, approximately $1.36 billion were lost by sellers on private sales over the past 3 years, and that off MLS listings sold for 1.3% less than open market listings. And what that means is that these private websites where the houses were not on the MLS that sold while they were private listings sold for 1.3% less than listings that would have gone through the MLS. Now, what's the translation of that in real dollars? Well, if you take that data to its logical conclusion, and let's just say, for example, that you take a house price that sold for $500,000. A seller that sold a house for $500,000 through a private network based on this study would have lost approximately $6,500 per sale. So I don't know about you, but I think $6,500 is pretty significant. And I actually think myself that the number's larger than that, but that's just my opinion. And so you may or may not agree with me, but this is the data in the study by Zillow. Also, per the Zillow study, approximately another $1.5 billion was lost when one brokerage represented both sides of the deal. So let me explain that from two contexts. On a private listing network, and let's say we're referring to the Compass network, so let's say that Compass makes a sale through their private network. Well, most, if not all of the time, when it's a private network sale, Compass is going to represent the buyer and Compass is going to represent the seller. So you can see without me editorializing, that's a dicier road to navigate. Are the two agents neutral, or are they doing things that might prove to be not advantageous to one or both parties? So think about it yourself. Let's say you're either a potential buyer or a potential seller. So let's say that you have your house listed with ABC Realty, and ABC Realty has the buyer also. Well, in legal parlance, or what they refer to in the real estate industry, that relationship is typically referred to as a transaction broker. A transaction broker means basically that the same company or the same brokerage is representing both parties to the sale. It may be the same agent, or it may be two agents from the same brokerage. And so it's hard for two agents to serve two masters. So basically, if you're following the laws and you're not working to the detriment of either side, you have to be completely neutral. So let me give you an illustration of what a neutral scenario would be. Let's say you have a listing and you have it up for $500,000. And then let's say you're also representing the purchaser. Well, a lot of purchasers understandably might say, hey, Joe, what do you think I ought to offer on this $500,000 listing, and what do you think it's worth? Well, when you're a transaction broker, you're really constrained to what you can volunteer towards those type of questions. Because if you give firm data or opinions to that buyer, then you're putting the seller at a disadvantage and you're violating your oath to be neutral in that type of scenario. By the same token, let's say that buyer says, okay, let's write an offer for $470. So now you present that offer for $470 to the seller. And of course, that seller hired you to sell their home. So that seller says to you, well, Joe, I'm asking $500. The buyer's offering me $470. What do you think I ought to respond as a counteroffer? And what do you think should be our ultimate objective in this particular negotiation? Again, really, the agent is constrained from giving you much opinion in that regard. And we've all been faced with scenarios over the years where we've represented both parties on a sale. I myself have done that on, a fair amount of occasions. And I'm extremely careful and cautious as to not do anything that would be at the detriment of either side in the transaction. But I know from talking to other agents, some agents have lesser training than others. Some agents don't have the ethical compass that other agents do. And some agents just don't really understand what a transaction broker is supposed to do. Because I've heard agents on transaction brokers give their customer a lot of guidance and information, which is not what they're supposed to do. So it's a very dicey slope, and you can see where it's possible that a lower price could end up in that situation because you can't be an advocate for either side. So when these private listing networks like Compass have both parties to a sale, because they can't give as much direction or any direction really, it many times can constrain the final price. Also, and probably the most important thing, is you're not offering the house to the widest variety of customers. For example, you're a seller. Would you rather have, like in Orlando, let's say, the MLS system has well over 10,000 active agents. So all the agents in the MLS can show any of the listings in the MLS. So let's just compare, and I don't know the exact number, but let's just say Compass Real Estate in the Orlando market has somewhere around 500 or 600 agents. So would you rather show your house to 500 or 600 agents, or would you rather show it to 10,000 plus? Well, there might be a minority of people that want less traffic on their home because they don't want the hassle of people in and out of their house. But I think most people's number one concern is two things: getting the most money for their house and selling it in as prompt a fashion as they can. And what's going to give them a better opportunity to do that? 10,000 agents showing the house or 500 agents? I think you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that the option with the 10,000 plus agents for most sellers is going to be a far more beneficial option for them. So the data that I showed you, or that I mentioned about the lost revenue and stuff, I did want to say, keep in mind it's a Zillow study and could be somewhat biased. On the other hand, from a common business sense perspective, again, would you rather have thousands of agents show your home in order to maximize your result, or far less than that? This is a highly charged subject currently in our legal system. My personal take, and I'm not sure all brokerages agree, is this is basically, and I don't want to say this flippantly, but this is a way for these private listing networks like Compass to generate more revenue for their own company. That's the first and foremost benefit of this. And why do I say that? Because if they're doing both sides of a transaction, they're making up to twice the commission they would if it was a two-agent transaction that was split equally between two sides. So obviously, we're in a capitalistic society, so a lot of owners of companies, especially ones that are maybe publicly traded, they want to maximize their revenues. So consequently, they might be increasing their profitability at the potential expense of sellers. This is clearly not illegal, but is it in the seller's best interest? I believe the data and logic provide a clear answer to that question. You know, you've heard me talk about different things in the podcast, real estate, politics, etc. And I always try to implore my listeners to do two things. Number one, what are the facts? Forget all the BS that you hear, forget all the lies that you hear, because our society is full of lies that's increasing exponentially, especially over the past 10 years. Secondly, use common sense. And again, if you were I'll use a simpler thing. If you were advertising a car for sale and you decided you wanted to sell it yourself, would you want to put it on 10 sites or would you want to put it on one site? I think you'd probably feel that 10 sites would have a better opportunity to sell your car quicker and get a higher price for it. That's just common sense. That's got nothing to do with the quality of the site or any other variables. It's strictly a numbers game. And I feel very confident in saying the more exposure anything gets, the likelihood is it's going to be a more successful result for the person selling. So I'm going to make a slight transition, but this is even a more exciting concept in real estate. And we're going to refer to the king of online information, and that's Google. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with Google. For most people, that's the number one choice in search engines that they use. So why am I bringing up Google, and how does that correlate to real estate now and in the future? Well, basically, here's what's happening with Google, and this is recent, like in the last week or so. Google basically announced last week that they were taking their home listing ads nationally. What does that potentially mean for the real estate industry? Well, basically, here's what that means from what they've shared and from my own opinion. The new format that Google is going to be rolling out will put real listings, and they'll include photos, pricing, and home details right inside mobile search results in all 50 states. So buyers will have an opportunity of getting information on the properties, leaving messages, booking an appointment to view that home with a local agent without ever leaving the search page. And this rollout is just in its infancy. It's going to continue market by market throughout the summer for what I've gathered in doing my research. And to me, it's very exciting, and it could be a big game changer, because what has happened in real estate up to this point? Well, you've heard all these arguments that I'm bringing up about private listing networks. You know, I'm not a fan of what Compass is doing, but I'm also not a fan of a lot of things that Zillow does. But you've got to give the devil their due, in the sense that the CEO of Compass is a very intelligent gentleman. He's extremely high technologically driven. He knows how to stir the pot and get publicity. He's done a tremendous job of growing the size of Compass. I can't speak for their profitability, because you hear a lot of mixed results on what their profitability has been, if any, up to 2026. But he's done a great job. They just acquired a bunch of companies in the past 6 months, so they're a huge entity right now. Zillow is probably the best known entity of providing information. The average customer, when they get started in their real estate searches, they go online, and probably Zillow is going to be the first site they go to. There's other big sites, but Zillow is going to be the most popular site. But where has Zillow gotten their data? And this is where the National Association of Realtors and the MLSs have let agents down. Zillow gets their data from basically the MLS. And more importantly, the MLS gets it from agents. So what does that whole kind of pie chart indicate? Well, in order to have real estate data, you've got to have listings. So that requires all the thousands and thousands of agents throughout the United States that are busting their rear ends to get listings from customers. And then, of course, a good quality agent spends a lot of time, effort, and money to market that listing. They do a good job with photography. They do a lot of marketing. They do a lot of communications. If you use myself as an example, I've always worked 7 days a week. I take calls at night. I spend a lot of time trying to not only sell current things, but perpetuate my business, grow it, increase my spread of what I call my niche markets. So I've earned every dollar I make. I make no apologies for it, and I think I do a great job on behalf of my customers. So, but where does Zillow, I'm using this because Zillow gets their data from the agents and from the MLS. So we provide, think about this, we provide the product and Zillow's getting all the benefits. Zillow actually sells leads back to agents who provided the data. So we're paying for our own data. Is that a silly concept or not? And Zillow charges a lot of money for this. And now we have these mega agent teams, and they've got all these different metrics and analytics, and it's even pinched the solo agents or the small teams. They get even less benefit from Zillow. These mega agents, of course, form these big teams, and then they give leads out to their teams, and then they get a chunk of that agent's revenue. It's just not a good system, and it's certainly, over time, it's not really what I call it hasn't been a good business model for the real estate industry. But nonetheless, we're in that predicament right now. So if what Google says they're going to do takes effect, it's going to benefit consumers, and it's going to benefit agents, and it's going to lessen the strength of Zillow, and it's also going to lessen the strength of these private listing networks. So quick question, where does a buyer's home search actually begin? Well, when you think about it and you dig down, it really doesn't have to begin on Zillow or some of these other national websites. When a buyer first opens an app or a portal or a search engine, they go into Google. And many of them may say, okay, let me see the homes for sale in Hunters Creek. And so Zillow is the number one position. They sit in front of every portal, every brokerage site, every app. It's basically the entrance to all the other portals. Now, the detail that matters most in this recent news is that the Google ads will directly come from the MLS. Now, they're going to have agreements with participating MLSs. So the supply for the Google program is all MLS data. So it remains to be seen exactly what the cost could be for this, but it's going to be up to the MLSs and or the NAR to form a negotiating committee to make sure that the terms that they and Google strike are fair. So think about this. For the past year or so, we've watched our industry try to bypass the MLS. The private listing service with Compass, Then Compass moved its listings to another large real estate network. And they also partnered with a big lender. Zillow has partnered with some brokerage partners. There's all these things that are trying to water down the MLS. Even though the MLS is still by far the number one vehicle, they've tried to really damage the MLS at the cost of the typical agent. And this is really fracturing the industry. So all you're reading about is all these court cases. The lawyers are getting wealthy during this, but it's not beneficial for the agents. So it's really a fractured mess. So think about in the future, if Google has these listings, it's going to be much better for agents, and it's going to be much better for consumers, both sellers and buyers. Because this is the starting point, and it's going to just be, I think, a tremendous thing. And we're going to have to follow it closely. It's going to require the National Association of Realtors in our individual MLSs to really get on the stick and make sure that they're proactive and take care of their agents. They really have not taken care of their agents over the last 15 years the way they should have. Now, what I was telling you previously about loss of revenue for sellers, some of the bigger, more volatile states like California and New York, for example, they felt that the gap was about 3.7%. So again, you figure, and I'll use 500,000, even though you can't buy much in California for 500,000. 3.7% of 500,000 is about $18,000. So that's real money. So the one thing I can tell sellers is more buyers mean more competition. How many how many sellers actually say, well, I want privacy. I want to limit how many people look at my house. Yeah, you might have a handful of people like Taylor Swift or a sports celebrity, or maybe if Barack Obama was selling his home. But the average seller does not want to limit their traffic. So the things that I want to finalize with the Google thing is the coverage is not national yet. There's only been 3 agreements signed so far. One in Chicago, one in San Diego, and a third one. So this is going to be up to the MLSs to get on the ball quickly and make sure that we're at the forefront of these relationships with Google. So keep an eye on it. As soon as I know more details, I will let you know. And, just to give you an idea, we've had 3 MLSs sign. According to the data that I saw, there's over 450 MLSs in this country. So the reason I was saying the MLSs need to band together, there's a lot more strength in the 450 MLSs, or a good chunk of them, negotiating jointly with Google rather than 450 single entities negotiating with Google privately, because Google's a big company, so there's strength in numbers. And so keep in mind, but I think this is exciting because maybe it'll give a sense of normalcy to the real estate industry in the future. Obviously, I'm looking out for 2 groups. I'm looking out for the real estate industry and agents like myself, and I'm also looking out for my consumers. Because when I go on an appointment with a customer, whether it's a buyer or a seller, I tell them 1 or 2 things. Number 1, I'm going to treat them just like they're a member of my family. Number 2, for a successful transaction and a successful relationship, it's got to be a win-win scenario. And this would be a win-win scenario, good for consumers and good for the agents. So that's all about that. I did give a tease on social media yesterday that I was going to go over the Iranian deal that we've supposedly have a memorandum of understanding. But I'm going to wait until next week for a couple of reasons. Number 1, it's very complicated, so I want to really scrutinize it carefully. And number 2, things change daily. 2 days ago, we had theoretically a memorandum of understanding. Yesterday, Israel attacked Lebanon, and then today they've put a ceasefire on this. So you need a scorecard to keep up with all these theoreticals. And the thing is, it's a very volatile situation. There's no guarantees. So I will have a lot more to say about the parameters of it next week in my initial opinion. So I hope this proved interesting for you. I hope you think these Google changes are exciting as what I think they're going to be. And if you have questions, please let us know. We're also thinking in the future of expanding our podcast to include guests, but that's still in the due diligence stage. So that's all for today. Everybody stay hydrated, stay safe, enjoy Father's Day, treat your old man good. And this is Marty Kaiser out.